I'm going to show you a really fun and interactive resource for students that it takes mathematical concepts and makes them interactive, fun, engaging, turns them into games, makes it a competition for the kids. It's just a really great resource. It's called Desmos, and to access it as a teacher, you would go to teacher.desmos.com. You'd start by creating an account. In our district, all of our school accounts are linked to Google. So for me, it's really easy just to sign in with Google. It automatically knows who I am. And I want to show you one of my favorite activities while teaching you the program itself. It's called Marble Slides. It's really fun. The kids get into it. And this is algebra. We use it in algebra. And we really use it as an introduction to linear equations. So marble slides, the point of it is to come up with linear equations that would allow a marble to slide down a slide and hit all of the stars. And the students really have a fun time with it. So we're going to start by creating a class code. It automatically generates one for you. And I'm going to come in to Internet Explorer and act as a student. Students would then go to, and you can press View Dashboard, and it'll put this up so you can project it on a smartboard or a projector or whatever. And the students would go to student.desmos.com and enter their class code, which is SG8VF, and they can join. And again, all of our students have a Google account, but I'm just going to continue without signing in. And as a teacher, you can see which ones of your students have entered. And this is what I love about Desmos is you can see what each student has done slide by slide by slide. So it makes it really easy to grade. Something like this, I use it more for exploration, not as much for summative assessment or anything like that. But there are lots of activities that you can use and generate yourself that you could grade or just explore yourself to make sure that your students are on task and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And there's another really great feature that's called teacher pacing. And this allows you, because it is overwhelming, I mean, each activity has quite a few number of slides, and sometimes you want to stop the class, come together, make sure that everyone's doing the appropriate actions to, for this one to make the marble go down the slide. So I start by restricting the screens. I mean, for this particular activity, I would restrict it to the second screen. So as a student, they can only go to, that didn't work. Okay, looks like it just needed a second to kick in. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so as a student, they can only go to screens 1 and 2. So an activity like this, I would explain the rules, and you're just trying to get the marble to go through the stars, and you've got to get this line down here somehow. So I would ask them to play around with just this number and see what happens when they change it to 8 or 6 or whatever, and let them change the values that they want, as much as they want. And then whenever I find a student that gets the correct answer, we would celebrate it and see what he did and launch his marble. And I would actually put his actual slide on the screen and show everyone, this one is the correct way to do it, and how did he get that, or he or she get that. And then I would go into what this number represents, the -2, just the y-intercept. The next slide, which I'd then have to go and unlock the teacher pacing, we talk about slides 3 and 4. So the next slide interacts with the slope of a line, and I would ask them to then investigate changing the number in front of the x. And many of them just pick whole numbers and they use 5, 6, 7, they start playing around with that, and or integers, we look at the negative values, what happens when you make it negative, what happens when it's +8, that. And a lot of them, the ones that don't really have much recall of linear functions, linear equations from 8th grade, they won't necessarily jump to a fraction. So then I ask them to change it to a fraction and see what happens with the steepness of the line and if it gets them any closer to the marble going through the stars. And they launch it. We talk about what the slope represents, and then I would show them how to calculate the slope. And the whole activity I would obviously guide them through, and we would talk about you know, the components of a linear equation in slope-intercept form. And then we would talk about constraints. Now, this doesn't really fit in Algebra 1, you know, piecewise functions, but you could, if you took this and you could make this a piecewise function and come up with a linear equation that goes through these stars and then come down here and do another linear equation that goes through this star. But the nice thing about marble slides is they haven't really made it like that. So I would talk about what happens when you launch it here. How can we get that line to go a little bit further? What if we played around with the x values and the domain and using that sort of vocabulary and those connections, and ask them to play around with that and see what happens when they play with the domain. So we didn't quite get it. We need to actually shorten this up a little bit. We would get through there, and it just keeps going and going and going, and it really helps them practice with domain, with range, and with linear equations, which is super cool. Another activity I want to show you that the kids have a lot of fun with is the polygraph, and unfortunately I don't have enough internet browsers to show you what it looks like, because this one you have to have give me one. Okay, you have to have two students logged in at the same time, and the game is called Polygraph. And Polygraph is really cool because it's kind of like Guess Who. So the students will log in, and the program will automatically find a partner for the student. And each person will have a picture on their screen. So let's say that this was on my screen, this system of equations. And the student who doesn't see this picture would ask the other student questions like, you know, are both slopes of the system positive? So the other student would see all of these pictures. So if both slopes were positive, then it would eliminate, you know, this one, this one, this one. It would eliminate a lot of the answer choices. So it would pretty much get it down to, you know, this one and this one and this one. And it's a Guess Who style, and they keep asking each other questions. And the really cool thing about this, if you ever play it in your classroom, is it forces the students to use vocabulary to really understand the mathematics, to understand things about slope, like positive or negative, horizontal, vertical. There's one on linear inequalities and systems of inequalities. They really need to understand what greater than or equal to is, less than or equal to is, what that looks like, dashed line versus solid line, what y-intercept means, and it really forces them to talk, which is this. It's just super cool. So this is Desmos. It's very exciting. I encourage you to use it in your classrooms, just even to play around with, especially the polygraph activity. You don't have to have a lot of prep into exploring the activity. Most of the activities I would definitely warn you to play around with first, you know, from start to finish. Just as you would a normal lesson plan that you make sure it's solid from start to finish, because there are some questions that will kind of throw you out, you know, throw you for a loop. You just don't want to be caught off guard. So, but polygraph is something you can easily do at any time. You don't need to do any prep work. It could be the last 10 minutes of class activity. It's super fun. So I hope that you use Desmos, Teacher Desmos, in your class.